Hello, here we are to continue to play with our epidemic model. You may recall that in the last session we created a transmission rate which tells the turtles how frequently they should turn red if they collide, and it's based on a percentage. I also just added a recovery rate, which we will take a look at real quickly before we get into making a graph, which is today's lesson. But a recovery rate is just a different slider, and what it's telling the turtles to is as they go along, every time they take a step, they are going to, with a some percentage chance, turn blue. Now you can imagine that, of course, the blue turtles are going to just turn blue anyway if they roll the right die in this case. But the red turtles have a certain percentage chance of turning blue, which is to say recovering from the epidemic every time they take a step. And you can see that the recovery rate only goes to 10 as compared to the transmission rate, which goes to 100. And that is because if you think about it, every time they take a step, they're going to have an opportunity to recover. Whereas they only have an opportunity to transmit or be transmitted to if they collide, which is a lower opportunity rate. Anyway, so here we are, and this is what is happening right now. And you can see even at a low recovery rate and a high transmission rate, relatively speaking, we still get blue guys. And if we turn this all the way up to 10, you can see how quickly blue takes over. I have this going pretty fast. Let me try that again when it's going at a more moderate pace. That's a little slow, but yeah, even at 10%, just see how quickly the red turtles all recover, because every time they take a step, they have an opportunity. So you figure every 10 steps at 10%, they're going to recover. So now we are going to learn how to make a line graph so that we can count our populations. A line graph, just like most of the other things that appear in the black portion of Spaceland, is a widget. So we're going to go to create a widget, and we are going to select line graph. We'll move it out of the way, give it its own little space here, and then we're going to double click it. And we'll call it populations. We'll say that the x-axis is time, because this is a line graph and we want to count it over time. And the y-axis, we'll just call it population. Series 1, since it's red, we'll call that sick. And we're going to add a second series. We'll call those healthy. And we will make them blue. Blue, blue, blue. All right. We've added our series. Everything looks good. And so then we say lock interface. And now you see this doesn't look like a line graph right now. That's because right now it would be, once we hit play and once everything is working, it'll just give us a table. But if I click that little button, now it turns into a line graph. And also just so you can note, you can actually download these data once you're done collecting them. So we have our line graph, but of course we haven't told the code what to do with the line graph. Well, we don't do that in Turtle, we do that in the world. Now I've already pulled out some blocks for us to consider. So let us take a look at forming a line graph. So we have pulled out a while forever is toggled. I pulled that right out of interface. And I have add a data to the line graph. So we need to do this for each series. So we're going to do this for the populations line graph for the sick series of turtles. Now on the x-axis, as I said, we're going to do time. And you may or may not know, but SLNova has a clock that's constantly running. So I'm going to make the x-axis the clock. And I pulled that clock from the environment because the clock time is a feature of the environment. Now the y-axis, we're going to use this detection block that I got from the detection drawer or the detection folder here, which is where you also find your collision blocks. I'm going to pull that into the y-axis. Now this says we're going to count every turtle within 150 steps. Well, within 150 steps of what? In this case, it's 150 steps from the origin. So 150 steps more than covers the entirety of Spaceland. So any turtle within our XY parameters will be counted, as will any turtle in our Z parameters, but we haven't really gotten there yet. So any turtle that is the color red will be counted. But this is only one of our series, so we need to make a second one of these. Well, here's a little trick. If you select all of this inside of there and you hit copy and paste, now I have that exact same block with all of the same features in it, but we can just change what we need to change. So we don't want sick in this case, we want healthy. And in this case, we're going to look at turtles with the color of blue. So we can run that code, hit setup, and now you see that it's counting turtles. Well, oh, I have this really high recovery rate. So let's make that recovery rate much lower, and we will try again. And what if we boost up our transmission rate to 100%? And our recovery rate is all the way down at 0.0001 out of 10. So very low recovery rate. You can see that the amount of healthy turtles is going up and the amount of unhealthy turtles is going down. You can also see that you can scroll along the line and see how many turtles there are. You can see how many there are in total and how many there are that are sick versus healthy. Now very quickly we're going to run out of healthy turtles. Let's bump down this transmission rate and bump up this recovery rate a little bit. And you can see immediately we get a different equilibrium. All right, so that is how you do it, except there's one thing. So what if I hit setup again and I hit play? Oh, one thing we forgot to do is we forgot to tell it to zero out time or clear our line graph. So that's where these two blocks come. The set the clock to 0 is something you're going to want to add now. As long as you have a graphing component, you're going to want to set the clock to 0 because otherwise it's just going to keep counting. And if you have a graph, you're going to want to clear that line graph so that it starts fresh. And we'll run that code. Now, when I hit setup, it clears out the code. And here is our populations at work. All right, well, that is how you create a graph. That is how you code the graph. And that is how you make sure you are accounting for clearing out the graph in your epidemic model. I encourage you to think about the other ways that we can have our turtles interact and the other kind of features that we could be counting in this scenario. Happy coding.